Hello, everyone. I am so glad to be spending time with you today. And for me, it's evening because I'm on the East Coast, and it's I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a long week and a long day. So I can imagine most of you can probably empathize with me, and I'm hoping that we can have a fruitful hour together, and I can share with you some really good things that can help you throughout your day and help us to be better as practitioners. And once again, just thank you so much for joining and giving me the opportunity to hang out with you and hopefully learn some things. So we're gonna dive right in. I need to start off by telling you that I am being given an honorarium to do this presentation tonight, but I am not an employee of Solventum. However, I have been involved with Solventum in numerous ways that I really want to share with you right now. I started in 2015 with a group that at the time was 3M CID. It was the Council for Innovative Dentistry, and it really was a great experience. And it led to me starting with a clinical trial and then becoming a KOL, and then that was the roadmap that got me to tonight. And I I I like to always highlight that relationship because it I can't be too or can't overstate the fact that these there's some wonderful minds out there and with a lot of different companies that have focus groups that need talented dentists to jump in with them and contribute and focus on problems so that we can get the solutions we need to get through. Let's face it, a very difficult job. It's very rewarding, but it's very difficult. And there are just some brilliant minds out there that would love participation from dentists like yourself. As I mentioned, a lot of different companies have focus groups and panels, and it's just a really great opportunity to jump in and try to move the needle a little bit to help out the profession and help out your colleagues and help out the patients as well. So like I said, it's been a great way to get involved, and I've enjoyed this now 10-year journey for myself. And I have to always start out by encouraging each and every one of you to get involved. So let's dive right in. I'm going to show you a slide that I bet you did not think was going to be the first slide you saw on a cosmetic dental lecture, but here you go. This is my pack out. This is my tool set. I am a DIY extraordinaire. I'm one of those guys that rarely ever calls a repairman. I do a lot of different things in the world of construction and in the realm of repair work, whether it's at my office or at my house. And this is the core of my abilities right here. This is my tool set that I've curated over many years, and I'm able to take whether it's an investment property or somewhere that I live, I'm able to take spaces like this, and myself, I can turn them into spaces like this. And it's very fulfilling and very rewarding, and in a lot of cases, it's very lucrative. So I I have to kind of preface this with, no, I'm not trying to tell everybody to get into this with, like, I guess in the to the extent that I have. However, I want you to see the metaphor that I'm coming up with here, that I'm very capable of approaching complex problems in my home and in my office when I have this at my side. Now, just to kind of uh, season this with how I got moving in this direction. I didn't just go out to Home Depot and buy this pack and then just go through the aisles and grab one of each. I mean, that's not the goal. Is to only have things in this tool set that help me, things that I know exactly where they are. Of course, if I went and just bought everything, I couldn't carry it. It would have too much stuff in it. I would have too much money invested in it. So there's a limited amount of space in this pack out that allows me to have the tools that I need, so that not only can I carry it from job to job, but I know exactly what's in there. I know how to get it when I need it, and I know what it can do for me. So once again, it's just a metaphor that I love to share. And as you can see, I have a passion for for construction and these types of things. So I have to have this is one item that is non-negotiable for me. I have to have this pack out whenever I help someone with a job or I do something for myself. And once again, I have to preface that everything in this pack out does not come from one manufacturer. I have a lot of different tools from a lot of different outstanding manufacturers in here, and it's these are things that I've gathered throughout the years that once again help me greatly every time I grab the handle of this thing to tackle a project. So let's move on with sharing some of the tools that I want to share with you that help me get through my day at my office with my patients. So we're going to talk about several of these things and how they fit into my day-to-day life and how they've helped me and how I feel like they can help you. And once again, we want to talk about all the different ways that different manufacturers have come together to develop products, and I want to share some things that some great things that Solvendum has done to help me day to day, and that I think will help you day to day. So moving forward, I know one of the most important tools that we as general dentists use from day to day is our composites. And I know there's a lot of great composites out there, and everybody kind of has that set of materials that, let's all face it, we love to use the term, and you hear it so much when you're talking with other practitioners. The is what works best in my hands. Well, I found out years ago that when I had heavy cosmetic demands on me with my patients, Filtek Supreme Ultra worked best in my hands, especially the enamel and body shade composites. I became very dependent on to get through my day, and it allowed me to do what I needed to do. I could almost go through my greatest challenges and grab from my supply and and get what I needed to quite readily. And so, as I mentioned, I became very fond of the enamel and body shades, almost to the point where I had this massive, I actually still have a pretty massive assortment of different shades and different in different viscosities that allowed me to deliver the kind of work that I wanted to deliver. So looking at that, though, I began to experience that frustration that a lot of us experience with really large amounts of inventory that, let's face it, a lot of times things expire, and then we're looking at how much money that we've put into shades that maybe we don't quite need, or because we've had to dispose of expired composites we've of different shades, then all of a sudden that one patient comes in that we need that composite for, and that becomes kind of a pain point for us. I know it did for me. So I would imagine most of you that stock a large amount of composite can definitely feel my pain on that. But one tool that I have come to enjoy that has helped me kind of get over that is the advent of intuitive shade selection composites. We have some different brands that have hit the market in the last couple years that have helped us kind of shrink that inventory so that we can attack these shade demands almost with a range. So we have maybe not one magic bullet, but maybe we have a couple different composites that help us get through our day-to-day life with these different demands that allow us to make beautiful restorations, and we don't have to stock huge amounts of composite. And here is, I want to show you the newest version among some of the others that is called Filtek Easy Match. And I hope that some of you have had a chance to experience this, because it truly has become a vital part of how I attack my day-to-day anterior composite use, because it has worked so well. And as you can see, we have three different colors that come in with different chromas and values. Of course, we have our bright, our natural, and our warm. And this has really really helped me day to day. It's actually caused me to take that massive case of Filtech that has all the different shades and all these different options for me, and it's allowed me to compress those into a three canister, or let's say a three choice uh, system that has allowed me to get through these cases quite readily. So, of course, here's what it looks like. These are three different dollops of the composite on a looks like about a B1 or a BL4 shade tooth. And it kind of shows you where each one of those composites fall as far as the range of value and chroma. And of course, most of the time we're going to be using bright and natural, but occasionally you need that warm composite to blend in, maybe a geriatric patient or something like that. But I find myself going to the bright and natural quite readily, almost, I would say not almost, but absolutely every day that I'm treating patients because I need one of them. So let's kind of look at, of course, I'm sure some of you have experience with some other different brands, and I did as well. I know, especially with Omnichroma, and then there was a Dentsply product that I was using. I I definitely, had some applications where a lot of these composites worked really well, probably 2 to 3 years ago, and I was very pleased with how we could subvert a lot of this selection quandary of what shade to use when I was able to plug in one of these Omni shade type products. But as you can see, probably the third tooth over from the left, you can see something that probably has happened to you and has happened to me with a lot of these types of universal restoratives, in that we get out into areas where the composite, because of it having too much translucency, we go through placing the composite. We do all the work we have to do to establish the shape and the size, and then polish it down, only to find out that the composite's letting too much light through. And then of course then we're forced to start looking at using a blocker, because that cuts down on that, or it might fix it. But then we're kind of, now we're back in the step of, or the stage of, why would we want to use something that we have to do multiple layers for, when we really are looking to simplify what we're doing. So as you can see from that tooth on the left, when I saw very quickly when I started using Easy Match restoratives, if you put a nice good Cabo surface bevel on the tooth and layer it out, the opacity really does maintain itself all the way through that restoration, and we get really good incisal edges as well as good body shades. I can tell you or as body performance, I can tell you that bevel is really important with Easy Match. I've learned that, and granted, I think the majority of my composites in my entire career, I've always wanted a Cabo surface bevel to help, quote unquote, hide that margin. But that bevel is very important to helping us achieve that beautiful transition, and getting us that good incisal transition. And as you can see, these are very intuitive and outstanding composites for helping us simplify those shade quandaries. So I'll just show you a real simple case that I had a lady that was actually sitting next to one of my patients, that she was there with her husband, who was there for a removable pros appointment, and she just reached up and said, "Hey, I've got this dark spot on my tooth. What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's just an old composite." And next thing you know, she's in the chair. I'm prepping that out, and you can see a nice bevel there. And I ended up taking out the rest of that composite, and then put in some Easy Match Natural, and you can see how beautifully hidden that is, and how great that incisal edge and light transfer is there. So just a real simple rudimentary filling, but it shows you the versatility of that composite system. So that this, as you can see, has become a really important tool for me day to day, because it's simplified the way that I pick up my composite shading options and how I use them. And you can see I can get really, really good results with them. So moving on, I want to show you a friend of mine named Jason, and Jason came into my office probably about 2 months ago. And as you can see, he's a really nice guy. You can see the laugh lines on his face and an outstanding gentleman. But he had a bit of a psychological pain point with his smile. He said, I've been through braces as a child. I went through ortho as an adult, and you can see he's dealing with diastema. He's dealing with, you can see the bonded retainer wire through those diastema. And he really wanted to change that, but he was very leery of letting me suggest traditional uh, cosmetic dentistry. He had some sticking points when it came to the very simple things like cost was a big factor for him, and then a topic that I don't have any literature to share with you, but I can only tell you a trend that I'm seeing in my office personally, and I'd be willing to bet most of you are seeing in your offices. Patients are coming in and they're not being as willing to let you cut the enamel off their teeth and do traditional, let's say porcelain laminates. I know most of us would look at his case and say, easy, we got, front four, 7 through 10 porcelain laminates or possibly full coverage crowns, be it. And be it as you may, he was well aware coming in the door that he didn't want to uh, sign on for any kind of porcelain laminates or crowns. One, due to cost, but two, he said, if you have to cut my teeth down, I think he used the term saw my teeth down, which most of the patients they tend to use those terms. I don't think I want to make any changes. I've lived with it for a while and I'll just live with it then. But I want to highlight something that I am seeing, as I mentioned in my patient pool. I am seeing a lot of patients who don't or who are averse to traditional cosmetic dental, let's say, bonded porcelains, because they are in situations where economics are a factor. They're having a little bit harder time right now. At least, like I said, in my area, I'm not getting as much acceptance due to financial reasons and our constraints. And then just like 5 days ago, I'm scrolling through my Apple news feed, and I'm not going to tell you the news source or anything like that. I don't want to get in the weeds with any of that, but I came across an article, and I just want to read you the title of this article, and it says Celebs Made Veneers a Popular Post-Pandemic Cosmetic Quick Fix, hyphen, but regret is on the rise. And then there's a quote that says, my mouth is permanently screwed up. Now, we as dentists know that a lot of this jargon is, and certainly this is not from a peer-reviewed source. It's anecdotal. I wouldn't even want to mention it for you to even look for it. But the point I'm trying to make is that our patients are seeing this in the media. They're seeing it a lot. I have a lot of I've seen this type of motif in articles that where they're kind of permeating what a lot of patients are seeing in their news feeds. So once again, the point I'm trying to make is it's that information through our patients, it's kind of being ingrained in their psyches, and then they're ending up in our office with these perceptions that we're having to deal with. Now, there are certain patients that we can look at and say, hey, that perception is wrong. We can do this, and it's going to benefit you. And trust me, I still do a fair amount of porcelain veneers. I'm not doing as many as I used to, but I found that there was a growing population in my practice that did not want that type of modality. So, as you can see, I ended up tackling Jason, and I took his credit card out of his wallet. We ran it anyway, and we did 4 Emacs video. No, I'm kidding. We didn't do that. We what we ended up doing was 4 composite veneers. We were able to do it with no enamel removal. I did it with no anesthesia, and I did it with Easy Match composite. So now you see the why I'm going to go through the how. I want to show you how we got to this point and how that case turned out, and give you some advantages as to why I consider this a viable tool to have in your pack out day to day. Because as you can see, there are a lot of patients that can benefit from anterior composites, and we don't have to look at that and fear those as far as how we used to when I was just getting out of school 20 years ago. I would have had to freehand this or use a putty matrix and do some really complicated things that might not have turned out really well, because some of those steps, let's face it, could have been pretty haphazard. So let's talk about some tools that help us with those cases, or making those cases more predictable. This is another kind of an oddball tool that I use as a woodworker, and hopefully some of I love it whenever somebody's eyes light up when I show this slide. But this is a great tool. It helps you drill very precise holes so that we can join two boards together precisely. And I use it in making furniture and in different things where I need to have precision and sturdiness it's a basically an overall genre of woodworking we call joinery. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can't just put two boards up together and shoot nails in them. Usually you'll have a lot of error, and systems like this tool really help me lock in the stock that I'm using and drill very precise holes. You can see everything is set up so that you clamp it together so that there's no guesswork there. So let's carry that metaphor into some of these new products for molding composites, larger composites and composite veneers onto teeth. Hopefully some of you have seen these different systems. U-Veneer by Ultradent. We have Veneer Now by Premier. And then of course the GC clear silicone molds that are helping injectable composites do some pretty good stuff. I will point out, when you look at the Ultradent product and the Premier product, which I'm going to go ahead and give you full disclosure, I've seen these, but I have not done any cases with them. Excuse me. They offer a kit that has multiple shapes and sizes for doing these composites that kind of a basically a one size fits all kind of approach. So you mold the closest mold you can find to the teeth, which that can work sometimes for some patients. It doesn't always fit them all. So I am a bigger fan of products like the GC product that allow you to do some custom work, and then you're basically copying, that you're getting to the end of the roadmap and making a mold of that, and then it helps you get there in real life. So that brings me to the introduction of my template that I used on Jason, and that is the Filtech Matrix. So you can see that's Jason's case on the screen there, his before, and then the proposed virtual model. And then you can see the actual apparatus to the right there. That is the Filtech Matrix. So basically what we did was design how we wanted Jason's teeth to look with a scan, and we're going to go over that workflow here shortly. But then we had the matrix 3D printed, and the matrix was set up so that after it was placed on Jason's teeth, we're going to have a space there that would approximate the shapes of the new teeth. So using warmed composite, we're able to place that inside that matrix, and then tooth by tooth, we can add that. And then I'll show you once again, we're going to go through the digital workflow, and we're going to go through the clinical workflow here shortly. But there is I know I'll go ahead and answer a question that usually comes up. You can use any universal composite. You do not have to just use Solventum composite or 3M composite with this apparatus. I think that's a very generous thing, because you can use basically what you want. I wouldn't recommend some of the composites that have a glass ionomer component. That I have not tried it, but I know some of those geomer type composites that I actually enjoy using in certain applications, like Shofu Beautifil, and I believe it's Genial by GC. I don't know that I would use that in these, because even with a releasing agent that is on that apparatus, I would worry about it actually fusing to the matrix. Once again, I'm just that's one dentist to another. I'm not sure if that's truly an issue, but I personally wouldn't do it. So let's look at this digital workflow. I'm going to kind of give you a little dose of it, and then we're going to bounce back out of it and then go back in. But it all starts with a simple scan, and just like in Jason's case, he had a conversation with my hygienist, and then my hygienist talked him through, hey, we might have an option for you. Then I come in there. Doctor time is precious. We know that our time is best spent actually performing work and not necessarily convincing patients, or I don't like to use the term sell, but selling dentistry. So we like for those conversations to happen in hygiene, and my hygienist can just very quickly, even as a preemptive measure, can go ahead and scan the patient, even as they're talking about, hey, here's an option. It really doesn't cost anything to scan the patient. Let's look at it, and then we'll let Dr. Shaw come in and advise as to whether or not he thinks this is a good idea. So the scan takes place, and then that after a conversation with the patient, that scan and our all the information that we've gathered from the patient, we can submit into the Clarity portal, and it looks like this. We get to select the teeth we want to restore, where we want the midline to be, and you have choices for smile styles, and basically, a very similar script for cosmetic script that we see in a lot of our lab forms that we've used for bigger cosmetic labs. And so a lot of us are already familiar with that in picking out our veneer styles or our crown styles for our cosmetic work. And we can specify all the, we have a lot of options here that we can control. And then the goal is to come up with, and of course we have to have pictures. So these are the five views that need to be submitted and into the Clarity portal for that patient. And then within about 2 days, you will get a notification that looks like that, and it'll say that your setup is ready for your review, and you can simply log in and check out what all has been proposed. And so they're virtual models, just like what we used for Jason. And I'm going to back up one, so we're going to just kind of jump back onto this workflow. So you see what it looks like when we have the proposal. If we like what we see and we don't want to make any changes, then we can approve it. So that's 1 to 2 days has now passed. So now we start. If you look at the bottom there, you can see following treatment approval, we have 7 to 10 business days that the matrix is designed, then it's printed, then it's processed. That's where they put the surfactant, the releasing agent on there. And then it ships and usually arrives by that 10th day to the doctor. And then that's when it's time to get the patient back in and actually use the appliance and finish and polish the new composite restorations. And then one thing that's not listed on there is, or there's two things that I want to point out that aren't listed on there. At that point, we toss the matrix. We've used it. It's done what it needs to do. If you want to save it, you can, or you can toss it. And the reason I'm even bringing that point up is, you notice nowhere in this workflow does it have, and this is a general dental pet peeve of mine, but nowhere in this workflow does it mention buying a $100,000 or an $80,000 or a $50,000 or even a $30,000 machine. Most of us are already scanning, and I would think that's already pretty ubiquitous at this point. But for this workflow, there's not a huge kit that you have to buy, and there's not any fancy equipment. So that was something that I really liked about it, that I could give it a try and I didn't have to become so vested in it that I felt forced to continue using. Now, going back to mentioning that most of us are scanning, if you happen to be still using mostly vinyl impressions, which that's absolutely fine too, that will add a little bit of time to the process. You might not get your matrix back in 7 to 10 days because, of course, that impression will have to be shipped. Then it'll have to be digitized, and then at that point, you'll track back, but it would probably add several days to the process, but it's still, the result could still absolutely be the same. So that's basically the digital workflow. And once again, here's the virtual models. And on the way is a feature that I used, as you can see, once again with Jason. And I got to do this, to present this. Once again, this feature is in beta, so it's not available right at the moment. But I was able to use it because of my beta testing agreement with Solventum, and it was really a great way to, once again, I'm going to use the term I told you I didn't like to use, but uh, I was able to sell this case very quickly with Jason, because once he saw the difference and he knew the process, that we had verbalized the process we were going to use, that was a very, very quick yes, go ahead and sign me up. I approve. So that was in that first 2 days that I mentioned in the I'm going to bounce back to that workflow. By the second day, I had that I had that smile simulation for him, and that was a quick sell. He saw that and said, "Sign me up," and away we went. So uh, with this tool, you can do way more than on Jason. We did the front four. That's what he felt like he wanted to change in order to get the smile that he wanted. But we can do simple cases. I'm going to show you a couple really simple cases. You can go all the way up to, there are plenty of doctors that have used this thing to do uh, first bicuspid to first bicuspid, upper and lower, and you can do fully functioning there. So it's out of one apparatus, we can do all those things, and we don't have to. Once again, we don't have to buy a bunch of expensive equipment to do it. So as I mentioned, you can do this case here was a front six case, front four. Then the middle case was the simple diastema closure, which, as you know, freehanding, those can get pretty tricky. And looking at the enamel quality of that those two centrals, once again on the middle picture, I don't think that I would recommend cutting those teeth down for veneers to close that gap. I would always want some form of composite, even if I didn't use a matrix. But as I mentioned, using standard Mylar or a BioClear, I know we all know that, I guess those of us who have tackled these cases know how tricky that can be. This case on the right, the two peg laterals, that's actually a case I did about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And peg laterals can be very easy, but sometimes they can be tough. You look at that tooth number 7. We've got a peg with a big space and a really big papilla, and trying to get that papilla out of the way with traditional methods to get a really good broad contact on the distal of that central incisor can be very challenging. So when I can do a case like hers, took me about 18 minutes after once I tried in the matrix and took it out and got it ready to go, and then etched and bonded the teeth. It was about 18 minutes, and she was out the door and happy, and that was with zero anesthesia. And I don't know if I'd freehanded those, I would have gotten as good of a result, and I would not have been able to do it that fast. So once again, a great tool that I have used to help my day. So let's look at the actual clinical workflow for this. Once again, as I mentioned, we want to try in the matrix and make sure everything fits properly, and then you want to take it off, rinse it real good, and then get it as absolutely as dry as you can. Then we want to do some surface prep. You can use some pumice with a prophy cup, or air abrasion is great on teeth, to the teeth that you're treating, to remove biofilm. And then simply go through your acid etching and your adhesive application protocols, and make sure and thin that adhesive out really good, so that you can get that matrix on nice and tight. Then place the matrix. Then from there, it's we recommend, or I recommend, a warmed composite. We place in each space, close the door, and let any excess come out of. There's a little hole at the incisal of each tooth that we're treating, that will allow excess composite to squeeze out. Then take, unsnap the matrix, take everything off, and then I'm going to show you some pictures of what those teeth look like after that. And then it's time to finish and polish. You get to flex your artistic skills and remove the any excess composite, and then put any nuances you want to in there. And then it's time to really polish those. We know that finishing and polishing cannot be overstated, because especially if you're using a good nanofilled composite, once you polish that composite thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, we know that that composite is going to be very resilient, and it's going to be very resistant to stain and any kind of denaturing because of the amount of polish that's on there. So that cannot be overstated. So I recommend, really, and there's some we could talk an hour just on finishing and polishing, but there's some great resources out there that are available if you don't have a protocol that you trust. So once again, I mentioned warmed composite. There are a lot. I know there's just some basic warmers out there. This is a new warmer that once again comes from Solventum that I just think it's cool. It's really worked out well for me because I love the fact that when you look at the picture of the base station over to the left of the screen, you can actually, once your composite is warmed up, you can actually take the top of that off the station and move it over closer to your patient, so you don't have to worry about wires and plugging things in and all that. And you have several minutes that it will continue to keep everything warm, so you can work quickly and you don't have to reach toward where a device might be plugged in. So that's really my favorite part. And of course, with me being a hardware and a power tool geek, I loved the fact that this was an availability. So the reason I shared this slide is because rarely do you ever see research that shows 100% of anything, but I thought it was definitely something worth mentioning, that 100% of the people that evaluated this product were pretty smitten with it. And I know I've been very, very smitten with it. And I thought that was, when you look at all the different things that we can do with it and all the things that it saves us, the efficiency it gives us, and the profitability it gives us, I agreed with them. So with the other evaluators. So once again, I thought that was great to share, because I rarely ever see 100%. So let's work through or show you a couple cases that I've done with this system. This is a female that had ortho to translate the upper threes into the upper two spot because they were congenitally missing. And the orthodontist did a beautiful job getting everything as lined up as he possibly could, and then flattened out the canines to make them look like laterals. And as you can see, did a good job, but still just didn't give that patient the wow factor that she wanted. So using Filtech Matrix in this case took about 45 minutes to give her some laterals, and that is a single layer of warmed Easy Match Bright. So there is no layering, even though it looks like we're picking up some of that cervical shade. I did not layer that, and she was a happy camper. Going to this case, I know I want to share quite a bit with you, and so I'm going to go through these pretty quick. This is a case that the patient did not have any ortho, and she was trying to get ready for her wedding. She's actually getting married in about a month, and she just wanted to look good in pictures and wanted her front four teeth to look a little bit better, and to get rid of the spaces and have a little bit better proportion. And this case, here's where I get to show you, if you look at that upper right picture, that shows when the matrix was taken off initially. It shows you where there's a little bit of gingival flash, you can see the outline of the doors, and you can see where, as I mentioned, excess composite squeezes out the little portholes. So you can see where those little buttons form, and those are the things you have to remove after you remove that matrix. So This case took me right about an hour, no anesthesia. Getting that flash off of there was no big deal. You can use whatever, there's a number of different burrs. I like a big 40 micron finishing burr that goes to a flame tip. I can work in there and get any of that flash out of there, and then take the residual composite that I don't need and start doing some artistic things with anatomy, and then polish everything out. So she ended up with a beautiful smile, ready for her wedding day, and like I said, really good. And when you can do those kind of cases that quickly, and in my area, you're looking at about $600 per composite veneer. That's a not a bad little profitability margin for a case that takes about an hour. So here's one more final case I want to share with you. This is a patient, that young lady, beautiful young lady. She had ortho. She'd had some interproximal restorations done. She did not have the money to dive off into 6 or 8 Emax veneers. I know I absolutely could have done that. It would have been nice to have gotten some crown lengthening done here, because the teeth were a little bit short. But when we presented the option of using composite, she said, let's go for it. That sounds like exactly what I can handle at this stage. So you can see this is immediately after the matrix removal. You can see the excess composite. Not a whole lot of flash on this case, but we got everything filled nicely, and the matrix fit nice and tight. You can see from this picture, we have a real dense incisal edge, and filled that canine really nicely. And then after finishing and polishing, she was absolutely ecstatic. She actually cried whenever she saw her teeth, because she finally has that nice uniform look that she's always wanted, and has shown it off to everybody. So that is, you can see how much I've enjoyed using that tool that is the Filtech Matrix. And the next segment here, I want to share another tool, and this is coming from a guy that said he would never do orthodontics, but I looked at the different systems out there, and I had some experience with some Invisalign and with some Clear Correct, and I always had some issues with it, but until I saw some innovation that, hang on, let me back up. Sorry. Until I saw this product, I didn't have a change of heart until then, because one of the sticking points for me with aligner ortho was uh, the attachments were so bulky and difficult. As I mentioned, I like templates. I like things that help me attach everything together nice and in a very stable manner. And I like to measure twice and cut once. That's an old woodworking thing. But when I saw this product, which is the Precision Grip Attachment by Clarity, I thought, you know what, let's look into this. So I learned more about it, and I realized that, okay, so I can use the same Clarity portal that I'm already using for my Filtech Matrix, and I can get rid of this process right here that is depicted, that shows the traditional way of adding attachments. And you might think, like a lot of orthodontists that I'm great friends with say, well, it's not really a big deal. I've got assistants that are really good at filling these molds with composite and placing them and then trimming off excess. And that's all good and well. But for me, the traditional way just wasn't good enough. And I'm going to show you why my gut feeling actually was right. Because when you look at what research is showing us, uh, when you have, and let's face it, when you look at those 4 depictions, the blue teeth to the left, you tend to see, coming from a lot of different offices. I know when I send patients out for orthodontics, I'm usually seeing traditional or traditionally placed orthodontic attachments that look like either 2, 3, or 4. And research is showing that having that amount of flash is really thwarting how the tray actually engages the tooth. So what I'm getting at is the proposed movements that we're getting at, that we're trying to get out of these orthodontic aligners, if they cannot engage the attachment properly, we are not going to get the proposed movement as readily, or we may not get it at all, which is going to cause more refinements and a lot of other different problems. So what does this precision grip attachment allow us to do? What it allows us to do is, you saw the template that was embedded in those trays. It allows us to place these attachments with insane precision, and the attachments are 3D printed and they're preloaded with resin, so we don't have to float them on there with all this composite. So what we plan is what we do. I have, once again, in construction, I have a mentor that told me years ago, if you can draw it, you can build it. And in this case, if we can design it, now that we have precision grip attachments, we can apply it. We can actually put those attachments in the exact shape that we want, in the exact place we need them to be. So we know that those trays are going to engage properly. And this just took a ton of, getting, well versed in using precision grip attachments allowed me to get that headache of these big globs of composite around these attachments. It got rid of all of that for me. So that allowed me to start jumping into doing some orthodontic cases myself, so I could not necessarily have to refer as much out of my office. So my advice to people that, maybe we're in my shoes, that to practitioners that said, what, I still just don't, I've got good orthodontists in my area, I don't want to do it. That's fine, and I feel the same way. I have some wonderful friends that are orthodontists, and they're wonderful practitioners. But I started out with some simple cases in my office and was able to get some really good results, and then jump to some maybe tougher cases like this one, where we have, an adult case. This is a female right around 60 years old. You can see group function end to end. We've got trauma from occlusion in the anterior, really throughout the dentition. You've got a big diastema, and this we were able to plan with our precision grip attachments. We were able to get those on very readily. And then in about 6 months, I had her some overbite to correct that end-to-end occlusion, and we had her just a little bit out of that group function and had that diastema closed. So for a guy that said he'd never do ortho, that would seem like a pretty tough case to tackle, but we did, and I was very pleased, and the patient was very pleased with the result there. So here's another case of a young lady that I have been treating for, I think it's 8 to 10 months here. You can see she had this was phase 2. She had already had phase 1 treatment as a child with an orthodontist. And then uh, when she got to me, she still had very narrow maxillary arch. Teeth 7 and 8 were very misshaped. And then, as you can see, very, very severe lower anterior crowding. So definitely not a case that I guess even 2 or 3 years ago, I would have thought aligners could treat. But once again, now that I've gotten into these cases with precision grip attachments, you can see after 10 months, we've got a nice, beautiful arch form developing in the on the upper arch. And then the lower, we're at that phase where we're doing our IPR to get those lower teeth almost ready to spin around and get the results that we want there. And I'd imagine we'll get at some point, I'm going to back up just a little bit. And then once I get the results that I want with those lower anteriors, we probably are going to tackle those front 4 with Filtech Matrix to get those shapes uniform as she's requested. So some pretty cool cases there, and that show what we're doing with clarity and with precision grip attachments. So once again, I can't overstate enough. I'm actually going to back up a little bit because I hustled through it, but I want you to look at that to the right, that line diagram that shows, that engagement is so important to get that tooth to move in the direction that we want it to, and applying the proper amount of torque or the proper amount of force on that tooth. And when we have composite flash around those attachments, the tray is actually engaging that flash. It's not engaging the attachment. So once again, that's something that even if you're doing traditional attachments with another manufacturer, that's fine. Just make sure that you're minimizing that flash so you get good attachments. So that is all good stuff there. So I want to talk about another final topic here that, as general dentists, we don't dive into too much because we have recare programs and we have hygienists that take care of this stuff for us. But the advent of this last tool that I want to talk about that has become a very important part of my clinical pack out here is ClinPro Clear. I hope some of you are using this, and I love the fact that it gives us a water-based uh, option that is different from the traditional uh, fluoride resins or fluoride varnishes that we've been using. I know there are every brand that is associated with preventives has their own varnish, and those are great products. I've used so many different ones for years. We've used everything. I mean, everything under the sun, because we all get samples, and then of course, as dentists, that at least for the ones that are private practice owners, we're going to start looking at price points and efficiencies and things like that. But one thing that we all know, patients tend to not be very accepting of fluoride varnish because they just got their teeth cleaned, and now we're going to goop their teeth up with a rosin-based fluoride varnish, and in cases where, in conjunction with our clarity, or not clarity, but our aligner systems, no matter who the aligner system is manufactured by, we have to be real careful because we all know those rosins are so waxy, they will stick to those plastics, and they're very difficult, if not impossible, to get off of those aligners. So what happens is these kids end up putting, or even adults, if they get a fluoride varnish with one of the traditional varnishes, they might end up placing that aligner in their pocket, or they might end up leaving it at the office. And that becomes a big headache because then we're reordering, and then it kind of sours their opinion of what is a very integral part of us, delivering proper preventive care. So I love the fact that this product being uh, water-based, like ClinPro Clear, we don't have to worry about that because this stuff doesn't stick to those plastics. It's very pleasant for the patients. We've had really good feedback since we started using this, and we don't have to wait. You know, and I am not a fluoride expert, but we all have studied the different facets of this so that we know what we're delivering in our offices. But we know that a lot of those, rosin-based systems, are predicated upon the rosin sticking, the waxy part sticking to the teeth for a long period of time so they can slowly release the fluoride that they're releasing. So when you have a product like ClinPro Clear that can deliver that water-based formula and deliver that, and it's actually a lower concentration of fluoride, can deliver it in a 15-minute contact time, it's kind of a no-brainer at that point because it's more pleasant for the patient, and it doesn't interfere with our orthodontic aligners. We don't have patients running to try and brush their teeth because they feel sticky and goopy. And those are the pain points that I've noticed over the years with traditional fluoride varnishes that have caused me to gravitate to this, very, very readily because of those reasons. So definitely a great product there that's become part of my repertoire, and I consider it a great tool. So that is, I guess, all we need to talk about that. And I actually am going to start the Q&A if I can, because that is what I have here. So I'm going to go up to top here. All right. I am going to answer live. Peter, it's just I guess it wasn't really a question, but a statement that said, "Wow!" exclamation point. I would love to I'd love to kind of pick your brain as to what made you say, wow, just so that we could maybe enter in a little bit more of a conversation there. Do you have anything to add to that? In the meantime, I will look at another case here. So going down to Brandy, asked me, are you charging these out as composite veneers or multi-surface fills? Also, are you submitting to insurance? PPO write-offs can be awful in our area. That is an outstanding question, and it's absolutely necessary to tackle that. Now, what I do is if the patient is using a PPO insurance, let's face it, they are not. I've not ever found one that would pay for a composite veneer. So, what we can do if we want to try and stipend the patient, I have build these out as four surface composites and then come up with, okay, we have a fee for them to pay for the actual matrix. I never cover the cost of the matrix myself. So we try to come up with a cost of the matrix that will help bridge that gap that will get me to, as I mentioned, that $600 mark. So, but typically I'm going to charge these out as composite veneers, and we've got those prices that are going to be out of pocket because, as I mentioned, that you're not going to find. I've not found any insurance companies yet that will pay for composite veneers. But I agree with I feel your pain on those write-offs can be awful. So what I do is I have a surcharge that pays for the actual matrix, and if we need to add in a little bit more there, if we're allowed to with that plan, we can do that at that time to try and make up the difference. Now, I will say we have seen here lately for surface fills on anterior teeth, a lot of PPOs are asking for pictures and for PAs. So if you're and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but if you submit that, sometimes there you have to prepare the patient that they may be looking at paying for this out of pocket. That's really, with cosmetic work nowadays, that's what we're seeing. So moving on here. Hopefully that answered at least part of your question there, Brandy. How do you separate them? So Brenda asked, how do you separate I'm actually going to answer this one. So Brenda asked, how do you separate contacts after using the matrix? The matrix has fins in the interproximal area. So those fins do help to actually give you a very close to, if not most of the time, you have a separate contact. But if in the case that you do have a little bit of composite that squeezes out, and say you're doing two diastema closure or a diastema closure that is coming from both interproximals, you can have some composite touch and actually fuse. So in that case, I just grab one of those quick strips and just cut through what little composite is there to get through to get through the contact, and then go through with my very very fine finishing polishers to get through. But typically it's not, the design of the matrix and the tight fit, and then making sure that, once again, if you use warmed composite, you're not using a ton of pressure to put this composite in there. So you tend to, if you do it right, you won't have so much composite squeeze out that you're actually fusing contacts together with a large amount of composite. So that's just part of the methodology that will help you out of there. But those quick strips work great just to refine. You're not trying to establish contacts, you're just refining at that point. So thank you. Gotcha. So best type of composite enclosure of so you asked what is the best type of composite in closure of diastema. Really, as I mentioned before, as long as you're using a universal composite, and in my opinion, it needs to be something that's got a high polishability with a nanofilled or something of that nature, so that you can have the longevity and the stain resistance that you need. You can really use whatever you feel like is best in your hands. So there, as I mentioned, I used to use Filtech Supreme Ultra. Now I'm a huge fan of the Easy Match system, and I believe the case where you saw that I did the front six, I told you that the young lady, was almost, or not almost, but she cried when she saw him post-operatively. That was, I believe, that was the whatever the bleach shade in Filtech Supreme Ultra is. I'm drawing a blank. It was either WO or it was one of the bleach shades of that. But everything else that I've done here lately, all the other cases, I've used Easy Match Bright or Easy Match Natural on. Let me jump back up. Bear with me for just a second. Uh, Raymond asked, "How is Filtech Easy Match differ from Kerr Simply Shade?" I'm not super familiar with how many options are in Simply Shade. I know Dentsply, they had a TPH version that was a three composite system. I don't know uh, how many choices there are with Simply Shade, but ultimately all the manufacturers are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to, help you reduce inventory and give you shade ranges out of those different choices you have there. So I would say it's, conceptually it's not much different than Simply Shade because we're trying to, kind of consolidate your inventory and allow you to be able to simplify and make your composite selection for anterior restorations a lot more efficient. So that without knowing exactly, what the options for Simply Shade are, I would say it's probably very, very similar. Uh, One second. I'm going to answer, I think, one more here. So we have one more from Brandy about the average cost of the Filtech Matrix. That's one that you would need to just ask your local 3M Solventum rep that because I don't know if the costs vary. What I'll tell you, or from area to area, geographically, the more teeth you do, it is a little bit more expensive. But I can add that when I do. When I do any of these cases, I always surcharge the cost of the matrix to the patient every single time. I mean, every single time, because I don't, that's the goal of this for the practitioner is to simplify these restorations. And if you're getting stuck in the weeds, having to try to figure out, well, I'm only making this much per unit because I'm having to pay for the cost of this matrix. It typically ranges somewhere, depending on how many teeth you're doing, somewhere, in a, couple $100 range to, like I said, give or take. But you'll have to, like I said, ask your local rep, and they can give you, pricing there. So I hate to throw those numbers out, but it's not super expensive. And like I said, I always pass those costs on to the patient on the top end, kind of like a surcharge, and that helps me keep from getting stuck in situations where I'm feeling as though I'm losing a certain amount per restoration because of the cost of the matrix. But I can tell you, when I've presented this method to the patients that I've used it on, here's how we're going to do it. Uh, Here's what you're going to look like. This is, you know, the basic, the cost. I typically do these without having to anesthetize. I'm not saying that, some people might want to definitely, I've got several colleagues that they anesthetize for these for every single one. I typically don't unless I'm having to remove some decay beforehand. I just don't. I haven't had to. So patients are very accepting of this. And then the fact that, okay, you're getting a cosmetic result that doesn't involve a $1,500 a tooth porcelain laminate, they accept it very, very quickly. And I've not had anybody say, well, oh, I've got to pay an extra couple $100 for this matrix. That is just It's not happened once. If a patient wants this modality to be used on them, then they have no problems with that because like I said, in contrast to traditional porcelain laminates, it's kind of a no-brainer for them. So it's got a very high acceptance rate. So definitely, well, great. Well, thank you for questions. I don't see any more there. So I guess I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator.